Good morning, everybody. I'm Lindsay Reiser.
And I'm Blaine Alexander. Joe and Savannah have the morning off this morning. Well, right now on Morning News Now, winter wipeout. Millions of Americans from the West Coast to the Great Plains are under winter weather alerts this morning. That means snow and rain are already impacting California and the Sierra Nevadas. That's creating a travel mess and knocking out power to thousands. We've got the very latest this morning from the storm zone and where that storm could be headed next. Brought to justice, the suspect accused in making the bomb in the Lockerbie terrorist attack nearly 35 years ago is now in custody and on U.S. soil. What we're learning this morning about the man accused of killing nearly 300 people and what comes next for the families of those who died on that flight. And back at home, Brittney Griner is getting her very first taste of freedom again this morning after being released from a Russian prison. We've got the latest on her trip back to the U.S. and what her counterpart in the prisoner exchange is saying this morning. And all clear from here? Well, inflation certainly took the economy and the stock market on a very wild ride this past year. So are better days ahead for 2023, or is the outlook even more uncertain than before? We'll break down what the new year could bring and what it all means for your bottom line.
Yeah, that's important as so many people look in their wallets right now. The holidays approach and wonder what's going to happen for the new year.
And trying to plan for the new year, too.
Exactly.
It was a rough time. But we're beginning with those winter storms expected to hammer the country this week.
Yeah, states from coast to coast are bracing for some pretty tough conditions. NBC News national correspondent Miguel Almaguer is in the Sierra Mountains in California with the latest.
Hey there, I want to show you exactly what the Sierra Nevada is dealing with. This storm system was brutal. It blanketed this area. As a matter of fact, in 48 hours, there was more than 48 inches of snow in some areas. It even shut down Interstate 80, a major thoroughfare across this area. There was concerns about avalanches. And while this certainly looks beautiful, it's also dangerous.
This morning, a relentless storm system powering its way from coast to coast, packing a nasty punch, dumping snow, rain, and ice. Brutal conditions expected to impact more than 50 million people nationwide. It started out west, blanketing parts of the Sierra Nevada mountains with more than 4 feet of snow. Whiteout conditions wreaking havoc at Lassen Volcanic National Park. While torrential rains and heavy winds put millions along the Pacific coast at risk. Water rescue crews in Orange County hoisting a man to safety after a flash flood tore through a drainage canal. High winds also battering the region, with wind gusts reported up to 169 miles an hour at a ski resort near the Nevada border. At this popular lodge in Lake Tahoe, the chairlifts almost taking flight in the wind. Dangerous winds also downing power lines and trapping drivers in their cars in Northern California.
Whatever you do, don't get out of the car.
All of this part of what's called an atmospheric river event, when moisture coming off the Pacific Ocean stays in one area at a time, hammering it with snow or rain. And as that system works its way east, blizzard-like conditions are expected to hit the northern plains, while threats of tornadoes and damaging winds could impact some southern states on Tuesday.
No, I'm not ready for this. I was in Florida yesterday.
Overnight, a separate system bringing snow to parts of the Northeast, including dangerous conditions in eastern Pennsylvania, where there was a rollover accident. This car flipped upside down on the side of the road. And by the end of the week, that same brutal storm system that originated off the Pacific coast could also take aim at the Northeast.
There's another concern looming in this area. All that snow you see on tree branches could snap down some trees onto power lines and create power outages. It's also frigid here, just 12 degrees. All of the problems in this area now headed east. Back to you.
All right, Miguel, thank you.
Wow, well, let's get the very latest on that storm track now, plus your Morning News Now weather.
Meteorologist Bill Cairns joins us now for the latest. Good morning, Bill.
Morning. We need to get Miguel a hat. It's 12 degrees and he's not wearing a hat. That was the first thing I noticed. Yeah, winter wonderland, to say the least, in areas of the West. We need the snow. We need the rain. It's just not all at once. And, you know, happening on the weekend, ruining people's plans doesn't help either. So that storm, you notice that the Sierra is now no longer under a winter storm warning. The mountains outside of Los Angeles are under a winter storm warning. They'll be getting some snow at the high elevations during the day today. And then the storm is on the move. All the purple in here that catches your attention, those are blizzard warnings. So portions of 5 different states under blizzard warnings. And it doesn't look like this will be a big storm for Denver, but this will be a huge storm for areas of western Nebraska, areas of South Dakota, right along the border here of Wyoming, even a little corner of Montana. We may go 2 days or so where the roads will be impassable, where they're going to tell people to stay off of them because of 55-mile-per-hour wind gusts, 1 to 2 feet of snow. So here's the snow forecast. This will go all the way out through Wednesday. You know, today we're getting some of that snow in areas. We've already picked up, Alta already picked up 18 inches of snow outside of Salt Lake City. And then the storm is going to move through the mountains of Colorado. Areas like Steamboat are going to pick up a good 6 to 12 inches, all the way back down towards Durango, Telluride area, also Aspen Vale. Everyone will be skiing in powder come tomorrow. Then the problems will be when the storm really matures and gets stronger and the winds are blowing and it's a light powdery snow. That's why interstates like 80 and 90 here are going to be very treacherous over the next couple of days throughout this region. And you get storms like this and you worry about the livestock too out there, and farmers, you know, and people getting their food to their herds. So there's the timing of it. The other thing we have to watch out carefully too is what happens in the south. It looks like the severe weather will be on Tuesday afternoon and evening, especially through areas of Louisiana. And I know we were talking about what's going to happen with this storm system. We track it towards the East Coast on Friday. I know my kids are already asking me, are we getting a snow day? Are we going to, what's going to happen? Are we getting the first big storm?
No, because everything's virtual now.
Exactly, right?
Right.
That's so cruel, isn't it? That's like a whole different topic. But so here's our map showing the likely areas, moderate and heavy snow as we head towards the, unfortunately for all the city kids from Boston, Hartford, New York, Philly, not a snowstorm for you. But inland areas, we'll be talking about snow. So, not yet for the big cities.
We'll bring you back for another segment on the lack of snow days now.
It's so mean, right? You don't have school. It's a beautiful snow day, but you have to go to school.
That was the benefit of the weather before, right?
That was the whole point of snow day.
Wiped away.
All right,
You're upsetting me.
We don't need to bring you back. There it was. Bill, thanks so much.
Bill, thanks so much. Well, this morning, a former Libyan intelligence operative accused of making the bomb that destroyed a Pan Am flight over the Scottish town of Lockerbie 34 years ago is now in U.S. custody. That's according to the Justice Department. NBC News Chief Foreign Affairs Correspondent Andrea Mitchell has that story.
Good morning, Lindsay and Blaine. Well, following his extradition to the United States, Abu Aghila Mohammed Massoud becomes the first Libyan intelligence operative to face charges on U.S. soil for the bombing of Flight 103. It's one of the worst terrorist attacks in history that killed hundreds of Americans, including 35 Syracuse University students on their way home for Christmas after a semester studying in England. 34 years after the terrorist bombing of Pan Am Flight 103 over Lockerbie, Scotland, a former Libyan intelligence operative suspected of making the bomb is in U.S. custody this morning. A Justice Department spokesman announcing the arrest says Abu Aghila Mohammed Massoud will make his first court appearance in Washington today. The U.S. indicted Massoud in connection with the bombing 2 years ago, after officials received a copy of a 2012 interview of Massoud by Libyan law enforcement following the collapse of Muammar Gaddafi's regime. According to an FBI affidavit, in that interview, Massoud admitted building the bomb that brought down the plane and conspiring with 2 other Libyan operatives to carry out the attack. Massoud also said Libyan intelligence ordered the bombing and that Gaddafi thanked him and others in person for conducting it, according to the FBI. On December 21, 1988, Pan Am Flight 103 was 38 minutes out of London, bound for New York, when it exploded over Lockerbie, killing all 259 people on board, including 190 Americans and another 11 on the ground. Mary Kay Stratus lost her husband, Elia, in the attack.
He was only 43 years old, but had lived a very full life.
With Massoud behind bars awaiting trial, Stratus says he must face swift consequences.
It's taken 34 years to get this far. Sadly, many of our family members have passed on, and so we want this justice fast.
Kara Weeps's brother, Rick Minetti, was among the 35 Syracuse University students on board Flight 103, heading home for the holidays. She says Massoud's arrest is a major step forward after 3 decades.
It's surreal. It's overwhelming. I don't even know if I have the exact words at this moment. Is he the only person? No, but is he a key person? Yes.
Massoud is the 3rd former Libyan intelligence operative to face charges in the attack. In 2001, Abdel Basset al-Megrahi was convicted of the bombing in a trial overseen by Scottish judges. He was freed on compassionate grounds 8 years later while suffering from terminal cancer and died in Libya in 2012. Another operative, Lamin Khalifa Fhimah, was acquitted of all charges. Lindsay and Blaine?
Andrea, thank you so much.
This morning, we're learning new details about Brittney Griner's first few hours as a free woman, as one of the officials who took that plane ride from Abu Dhabi to Texas describes her journey home. NBC News correspondent Priscilla Thompson is live from Brooke Army Medical Center in San Antonio, Texas, where Griner still is at this hour. Priscilla, what more are we learning, and what has Griner been up to there?
Hey, Lindsay, good morning. We now know that Griner played basketball for the first time since her detention this past Sunday. Her team says that she also got a haircut and spent time with her family as she continues to take advantage of the resources and support offered at the medical facility and base just behind me. And as we're getting those updates, we're also learning more about what happened on that 18-hour flight home. This morning, new photos and new details about Brittney Griner's first moments of freedom. Griner standing in front of an American flag. By her side, wife Sherelle and the man who helped bring her home after nearly a year in Russian captivity.
And she called everyone over to take photos with her. It shows you the kind of woman that she is.
U.S. Special Envoy Roger D. Carsons spent months working on the team that negotiated Griner's release and was on board that 18-hour flight to Texas. Carsons says the two-time Olympic gold medalist was eager to connect and chatted for hours.
We actually tried to give her some space. She said, no, I want to talk. I want to relate to people. And I found someone who was just absolutely wonderful, kind, generous, interesting, and above all, authentic.
Surprising many, the first images of Griner showed her with her head shaved. Her attorney telling ESPN that she cut off her locks about 2 weeks ago because of the cold temperatures, saying that they kept freezing after she showered. Griner's return, while celebrated, has ignited a firestorm among some Republicans who say freeing Russian arms dealer Victor Bout jeopardizes national security.
The Trump administration was always very clear. We weren't going to trade bad guys for celebrities because it creates the wrong incentives for the bad guys.
Now in Russia, Bout, who served 11 years in U.S. prison for conspiring to kill Americans, among other charges, is speaking out. Telling Russian state media he fully supports the war in Ukraine and would volunteer if he could. U.S. officials say any threat Bout might pose is manageable and that they're focused on bringing more wrongfully imprisoned Americans abroad, like Paul Whelan, home. A battle Griner is also vowing to fight.
BG and I will remain committed to the work of getting every American home.
And as for what else might come next for Griner, no word yet on whether she plans to play in the upcoming WNBA season. But the Players Association says her health is, of course, their top concern, but they're hopeful that she'll return to the court soon, something I'm sure we would all love to see. Lindsay,
yeah, absolutely.
Blaine?
If she's already being able to be on the court, we love to see it. Priscilla, thanks so much.
Well, turning now to the war in Ukraine, fighting has intensified in both the eastern and southern parts of the country as power outages there leave many facing a bitterly cold winter. NBC News chief foreign correspondent Richard Engel has the very latest.
Ukraine's President Zelensky is intensifying diplomatic activity, speaking on Monday with President Biden and also on the same day with the presidents of Turkey and France, and says that there could be important results coming in the next several weeks. But in the meantime, Russia is not slowing down its attacks against this country.
If Russian President Vladimir Putin can't have Ukraine for his own, he seems content to destroy it. Russian troops have been stepping up attacks across the frozen east, driving Ukrainians into cellars with only firewood for heat. Russia is raining fire on the south, too, targeting the electrical grid, temporarily blacking out Odessa, firing up to 60 mortars and artillery shells at Kherson. Russia has a special score to settle with this city. Last month, there were victory celebrations in Kherson's main square after Ukrainians drove out Russian troops, ending 8 months of occupation. Now the party's over. The latest Russian attacks have caused rolling blackouts and forced many residents to leave.
But in pop-up warming and charging centers like this one, the mood remains upbeat and optimistic because residents here say the current hardships are still better than living under Russian occupation. These children were only spared from being separated from their friends, caregivers, and country because of lies. They're orphans living in a hospital in Kherson. During the occupation, doctors and nurses told Russian troops the children were all sick with communicable diseases or couldn't be moved, so the soldiers would stay away from them. Russian troops took other orphans to Russia to be given to families. The unions, often shown on Russian TV, to reinforce Moscow's official line that Russia is saving Ukrainians from their supposedly neo-Nazi government. Ukrainian officials say more than 13,000 children have been sent to Russia since the war began. Maya Mendel, a nurse, says, how would Americans feel if some other country was taking American children away? These children will grow up in Russia, raised as Russians. It's a type of genocide, she says. Ukrainians also call it state kidnapping. Russia is open about its policy and even seems to be proud of it, saying it is designed to rescue children from a war zone.
Richard Engel, thank you so much for that report.
Welcome back, everybody. After a wild weekend of high-stakes soccer, only 4 teams remain now in the quest to bring home the 2022 World Cup.
But for some, there is a shadow over that excitement this morning as the soccer world is now mourning the shocking loss of a man whose voice helped inform millions of people.
With more, we are joined by NBC News foreign correspondent Megan Fitzgerald in Doha. Megan, good morning.
Ladies, good morning. Good to be with you. I can tell you that the sports world really is grieving the loss of Grant Wahl. I mean, his name is synonymous with U.S. soccer, and we are seeing these tributes just pouring in from celebrity athletes like LeBron James to Megan Rapinoe. Grant Wahl was in his prime.
This morning, shock and devastation fell all throughout the sports world following the unexpected death of 49-year-old Grant Wahl, one of U.S. soccer's most recognizable journalists.
For him to not be with us anymore at such a young age, that's an immense shock.
Wahl collapsed and died while reporting on the Argentina-Netherlands match Friday night. In the days leading up to his death, Wahl talked about his health on a podcast, saying he was dealing with a worsening cold and bronchitis. And there are questions surrounding the circumstances of his death. A reporter from the Sunday Times who was an eyewitness writing, "Why wasn't there a defibrillator?" adding, "Many minutes passed and we kept expecting it to come, but it never did." The Qatari government saying in part he received immediate emergency medical treatment on site, which continued as he was transferred by ambulance to Hamad General Hospital. The sports world remembering Wahl's passion and dedication to the game.
He helped raise the popularity of soccer in the United States to new heights.
Earlier in the tournament, Wahl making global headlines for a different reason after tweeting he had been briefly detained for wearing a rainbow shirt to a match. And over the weekend, riveting action on the pitch, the stuff Wahl's friends say he lived for. Morocco becoming the first African nation to advance to the semifinals after a stunning upset over Portugal. And leaving Cristiano Ronaldo walking off the pitch in tears in what is likely the end to his quest for a World Cup title. And as France eliminated England, a tribute from FIFA honoring Grant Wahl. Telling us here in Qatar, it was his mission to inspire the country to love soccer as he did.
We're just trying to create more and more fans all the time in the United States for soccer.
Now, there are 4 teams left vying for a spot in the finals. Tomorrow, Argentina takes on Croatia. And then on Wednesday, the Cinderella story of Morocco taking on France. And then, of course, the finals kick off on Sunday. Ladies, less than a week away.
So much to watch. Megan Fitzgerald, thank you so much.
Such a loss. Thanks, Megan. Turning now to international headlines. China continues to roll back more of its COVID restrictions.
Well, Claudio Labanga joins us again from Rome with more on that and much more. Good morning, Claudio.
Good morning. Yes, China continues to ease its zero COVID policy. Now, by midnight tonight, the contact tracing app that is being used by the Chinese authorities will cease functioning. Now, the app was used to locate people who will then be forced to quarantine if they happen to be in a pandemic hotspot. It follows the announcement last week that lockdown, testing and travel restrictions were also going to be relaxed. And let's go to Antigua, where a volcano erupted, forcing the closure of the local airport. The volcano is a major attraction in the Caribbean island, but it can also be a deadly one. In 2018, an eruption killed at least 215 people who lived in nearby villages. This time, the authorities say they have learned from that tragedy and that they are ready, but so far, nobody has been evacuated yet. Let's move to Gaza, where more than 60 tombs dating back to the Roman era have been discovered. They were found by authorities in an ancient burial site found by chance last January during the excavation of a housing project. A member of the Ministry of Antiquities and Tourism said that a set of bones and artifacts from at least one of the tombs date back to the 2nd century. Lindsay, Blaine?
Fascinating. Claudia, thanks so much.
All right, well, after nearly 4 weeks in space, the Orion spacecraft made a successful splashdown yesterday into the Pacific Ocean just off of Mexico's Baja Peninsula.
This trip was a critical test for the Artemis mission before NASA puts humans on the next trip to the moon. NBC News correspondent Tom Costello joins me now with more. All right, so Tom, November 16th, I'll take you back.
You have to?
We were together at the launch, and I actually braced myself against you. It was so powerful. Obviously, full circle now, this splashdown. You have sources in NASA. How do they feel about how it went?
It was a spectacular mission, and you're right. You and I were standing together on top of the NBC building at the Kennedy Space Center a month ago. This was a 25-day mission, and the Artemis Orion vehicle, so Orion is the spaceship on top of Artemis, traveled a total of 1.4 million miles as it orbited the Earth, but mostly the moon, and then went way out deep into deep space. And the whole point of this was to test ride, to shake down the spaceship. Never before flown. And now they are getting ready for humans, astronauts, to be on board. And that could happen within 2 years, ladies. But importantly here, they say that at every turn, at every moment, this spaceship and all of the engineering that went into it performed perfectly. And we need to stress it's not just an American spaceship. The Europeans built the crew module. So at every turn, it performed flawlessly. And now they're getting ready to put humans on board.
I've got to say that I'm so jealous of the two of you for actually being there for that launch. You know, Tom, I'm fascinated by so many aspects of this, but let's talk about these high-tech mannequins that were on board. There were no humans on board, but what can you tell us about these test dummies that were on board, and what is NASA hoping to learn about how these humans might experience space in the future?
Yeah, the Moonican is what they're calling one of the big mannequins, and it was loaded up with sensors to detect exactly how much radiation somebody might experience if they are on board. Also, the G-forces, the heat inside the spacecraft itself, just the overall stress. Because, again, nobody's ever been on board one of these particular missions, and they hope to put humans on board in 2 years, so the end of 2024, and then landing on the moon in 25. I think it's going to be 26 because they're a little behind schedule, guys. It also depends on SpaceX coming up with a lander down to the moon. But on that moon mission, landing on the surface of the moon, it will include a woman and a person of color, and for the first time ever. So making history at every turn.
And I mean, Tom, we know that NASA really wanted to test every system to its brink to make sure that it could withstand human space flight, from the heat shield to the parachutes to that new skip entry technique. And now their work isn't done because they're going to bring the Orion capsule back to the vehicle assembly building at Kennedy, right, and study it.
I love that Lindsay does deep dives on this stuff because she's as much of a space geek as I am. But you're absolutely right. And one of the most important points that they need to examine microscopically is going to be that heat shield that you mentioned underneath the Orion spaceship. Because when Orion came back in, it came in at 25,000 miles per hour. And when it hit the atmosphere, the heat shield heated up to 5,000 degrees. That's half the temperature of the sun. So it was never before have we experienced this kind of heat, this kind of speed, and so they wanted to make sure that the shield held because, of course, future astronauts' lives depend on it. It appears it did, in fact, hold perfectly, but they now want to go over it microscopically to look for any problems at all in that heat shield. Can I make one other point? Because you talked about it, and I think this is super cool. You know when you skip a rock across the surface of the water, sometimes it'll do a couple of hops? NASA did this on the spaceship. As it re-entered, it decided to bleed off some speed by having it skip off the atmosphere. And that allowed it to slow down from 25,000 miles per hour. And then as it went into the atmosphere, of course, the parachutes deployed, and it landed at 20 miles per hour in the ocean. So I love that kind of that skip analogy of the rock across the water.
Yeah, the first time ever for a human spacecraft. Tom, we often say what we do isn't rocket science. It's wonderful to actual talk literal rocket science with you. Thanks so much.
All right, guys. See ya.
Welcome back, everybody. According to a CDC report, about 25% of tests for the flu are coming back positive, and the number of hospitalizations are at the highest level in a decade.
Well, all of this as COVID cases are starting to climb and cold and flu medicine supplies are running low. NBC News national correspondent Stephanie Gosk has more.
Hey there, with the temperatures dropping and people planning their holiday trips, we are seeing high seasonal flu activity from coast to coast. All this comes amid calls to mask up and fears over a potential medicine shortage. With the holidays bringing people together, new concerns this morning as hospitalizations for both COVID and flu are on the rise.
When you think about like some of the winter and spring Omicron surges where it was just going crazy and we have like 100,000 plus cases, 1 million cases a day, we have higher hospitalizations now, which is mind-boggling.
According to the CDC, flu hospitalizations rose 32% from last week's report, with nearly 26,000 admissions, the highest in a decade, while COVID hospitalizations are up 14% week to week. In New York, health officials are renewing the call to mask up, indoors, on public transportation, and in crowded outdoor settings, as flu cases spike 64% from last week.
This is an unusual flu season, and it's being impacted by the fact that most Americans have been traveling and with cold weather have been indoors in smaller spaces and not wearing masks or taking the precautions that we did to keep flu numbers really low over the last 2 years.
For Kelly Trout, a mother of 2 toddlers in Virginia, flu season has already been a challenge for her family.
We had the flu last weekend, but before that, we'd been sick on and off, mostly on, for about 2 months.
She says she's thankful the kids were able to get their flu shots in time for the holidays, but worries about potential shortages of over-the-counter medicine.
We really don't have a plan, but probably after one more illness, I'll be scouring, the internet, trying to find a stockpile.
In a statement, Johnson & Johnson recognizing the high demand for children's Tylenol and Motrin, writing in part, while products may be less readily available at some stores, we are not experiencing widespread shortages.
We don't have the kind of shortages where we need to get manufacturers to make more. We need to just make sure they end up in the right places.
Amid these shortages, the makers of Tamiflu are also saying their medicines are readily available for pharmacies to order. So if you're in need of certain medicine that appears to be in short supply, our experts advise calling around. Odds are somewhere in your region they'll have it. Back to you.
Oh, great tip. Stephanie Gosk, thank you so much.
Turning now to the new details in the quadruple homicide in Idaho. Police are still searching for answers in the brutal killings of 4 University of Idaho students, as tomorrow marks 1 month since the investigation began. NBC News correspondent Steve Patterson joins us now for the latest. Steve, good morning.
Lindsay, good morning. The University of Idaho campus is now largely deserted because winter break is underway. The university had its commencement ceremony on Saturday. It was a poignant day because one of the victims should have been walking in it.
It's been a tough few weeks for our community.
A subdued and somber ceremony over the weekend. Pomp and circumstance mixed with grief at the University of Idaho's winter commencement.
Ethan Chapin, Xana Kernodle, Maddie Mogan, and Kaylee Gonsalves were taken from us far too soon by a senseless act of violence.
The victims honored with a moment of silence. One of them, Kaylee Gonsalves, should have been crossing the stage to receive her diploma. And on what was supposed to be a joyful weekend, fears that a killer could be walking among them. The police issued a warning to the commencement crowd, urging the community to stay vigilant and travel in groups.
We're going to have a lot of officers around. We're going to have a lot of Idaho State Police around. You'll see us both at the commencement as well as just around town providing safety.
Police are still searching for any suspects and murder weapon responsible for the murder of 4 students in their bedrooms almost a month ago. Officials have said they're looking for more information about a white Hyundai Elantra that they believe was near the house around the time the murders were committed. Moscow police saying the FBI is vetting the influx of tips related to the car. The campus quieter than ever as winter break begins. For those remaining in downtown Moscow, a struggle to regain some semblance of normalcy.
How does the town heal from this?
Time is a big thing for sure, but also just like embracing the community of Moscow.
For a community still waiting for justice, a cold winter settling in.
So officials say they are determined this case will not grow cold. There are almost 50 FBI agents working the case, and local police insist they still have the same amount of staff assigned. And those tips, by the way, continue to flood in without any indication that momentum is slowing down. Lindsay?
Pomp and circumstance mixed with grief. So poignant, Steve. Thank you. Welcome back, everybody. Well, accused of targeting underage users, e-cigarette company Juul has agreed on a lump sum settlement to resolve several of these claims out of court.
CNBC's Christina Partsinevelos joins us now with that and other stories. Good morning, Christina.
Good morning. So Juul Labs has reportedly agreed to pay $1.2 billion to resolve thousands of lawsuits targeting the company as a major cause of the youth vaping epidemic. Just last week, Juul said it had settled with about 10,000 plaintiffs, covering more than 5,000 cases in California. The settlement comes about a month after the e-cigarette maker secured funding from some early investors to help its business stay afloat. Apple will no longer bar employees from speaking out about workplace harassment and discrimination. The news comes after a review of Apple's non-disclosure agreements. Apple shareholders voted for the review in March after the company failed to make suggested changes to those contract clauses just last year. They had drawn scrutiny after a former Apple engineer accused the company of engaging in coercive and suppressive activity. If at first you don't succeed, try, and then try again. Twitter will attempt to relaunch its premium subscription service today, a month after previous efforts failed. Users can buy Twitter Blue to get a blue check mark and access special features such as seeing fewer ads, posting longer videos, and having tweets featured more prominently. The check mark was originally given to companies, celebrities, governments, and journalists verified by the platform, and now anyone can get one for $8 a month for web users and $11 a month for iPhone users. Guys?
All right, Christina, thanks so much.
Well, of course, it has certainly been a very tough year for the economy and so many people trying to navigate the record inflation, the rising interest rates, and, of course, the growing fears of recession have left a lot of us wondering what the future holds for our wallets.
So we brought in Investopedia editor-in-chief Caleb Silver here to discuss what we can expect. So let's talk about what everybody wants to know. Inflation and what we can expect, when we might see it start to come down in the new year, and also when the Fed meets again, what they're going to do.
Yeah, huge week this week for the economy, maybe the biggest week of the year. I don't want to get crazy about it, but we do have the CPI report, that's Consumer Price Index, out tomorrow. That's the last one of the year for November. Then the Fed meets this Tuesday and Wednesday on interest rates. The likelihood is that the Federal Reserve will raise interest rates 0.5 percentage point this week, and they'll probably do it again when they meet in about 6 or 8 weeks. So huge week this week, plus a budget deal that comes due at the end of the week.
Remind us, the CPI report, what does that show us?
Consumer Price Index, that's a basket of goods that we spend on as consumers. That's everything from groceries to gas to home heating oil to the goods that we buy. So big report, and we've been watching that slowly start to come down. Hopefully we get another low report yesterday.
And that's what I was going to ask you about, Caleb. Kind of some practical advice for people who are watching. You know, one of the biggest things that people talk about when it comes to the economy is grocery prices. When you talk to voters, when you talk to folks, they say the prices at the store are going up. What should people know to prepare for next year, especially as they're kind of getting to the end of the year, tweaking their budgets for next year? Are we going to see a lot of changes there and some relief in that aspect?
We probably will, but I would expect gas prices, which have really come way down now since those highs back April, they may go up again. Oil prices may go up again. We have a lot of instability still with Russia and Ukraine and supply, so I would expect that to kind of remain high. Food prices are very volatile, so those may remain high. You got to have that budget. You got to know what you spend. How much does it cost to be you? How much does it cost to you in your household and have that budget going into those stores, because food and gas prices are still going to be volatile next year.
And we know wages aren't keeping up with those increases. So, Caleb, all right, let's talk about you and your colleagues at Investopedia. You've come up with your big list of terms for this year. So walk us through some of them.
Yeah, we look at what readers are looking at. We got about 13 million readers a month coming and looking for something specific. So we were looking at the terms that had the biggest spikes throughout the year. Some of them you can imagine. Poison pill, that was our number one. Thank you to Elon Musk. That's when he went to go buy Twitter. Twitter executives tried to bid up the stock price to dissuade him. That didn't work. He now owns Twitter, as we know. Recession, that's been on everybody's mind. That'll be a big term next year. Yeah. Hostile takeover. Thank you again, Mr. Musk. He made a hostile takeover for Twitter. Bear market, we've been talking about that. We've been in one for the S&P 500 in cold storage. That's because of those hacks into those cryptocurrency platforms. If you had your money or your Bitcoin in cold storage, it might have been better off.
You know, you touched on Wall Street for just a second, but let's stay there for a minute. What is this next year going to look like for the stock market? It was pretty turbulent, of course, this year. What should investors expect in the year ahead?
Well, this is going to be a very interesting year, 2023. Why? Because the Federal Reserve has been raising interest rates, and at some point, hopefully they may stop or slow down the pace, but we also have high inflation. Those two are kind of kryptonite for the stock market. We've seen it this year. That said, we've been in a bear market. The year after a bear market, stocks usually go up somewhere between 20 and 30%. Not a guarantee, but usually the other side of a bear market and getting through a recession is good news for investors. I would stay invested because we've come through a lot. This is the time you want to be building and buying stocks at a discount.
Yeah, when that bear market ends, though, that's the key. All right, Caleb Silver, thank you so much.
All right, well, with just 2 weeks now until Christmas, food banks and toy drives are struggling with a shortage of donations this holiday season, and some are worried about not having enough to give those in need. Our Savannah Sellers spoke with organizers about some of the challenges they're facing.
Right? Look, I want you to see it from this view. Look.
2 years ago, the stage, the pews, almost every corner of Another Chance Church in Chicago filled with toys. But this year,
Pastor, this looks like a pretty good start, but is it?
It's not nearly enough for the people that's going to be standing in these long lines for hours.
They barely have enough to cover half the stage.
We have less money than we've ever had in our history.
We visited Pastor Kenyatta Smith last year when donations were down significantly.
Yes, less than 1,200 toys here.
But with just weeks to go to Christmas this year.
What are you seeing so far right now with donations?
Really slim to none.
Tanisha Reynolds comes here every year to get Christmas toys for her 4 children.
What's it been like to see that moment for them, the joy it brings?
It's amazing. It's amazing just to see the smiles on their face.
Food banks are feeling the strain as well.
So here we're stepping into the food pantry right now. I mean, these shelves look pretty bare.
Yes. On the other side of Chicago, at the Salvation Army's Community Center, they're struggling to help those in need.
How dire of a situation is this right now?
Well, we have some emergency food on hand for those who are completely out of food.
Captain Dalvius King Harvey said they're set to restock these shelves, but it won't be enough.
What does it look like at the holidays? Is the need even greater?
Oh, it's extremely... It's almost overwhelming because we do rely on the generosity of the public.
Families who used to come once a month, now coming twice as often.
Rising inflation isn't just squeezing those in need, but also those who often give. Here's a snapshot of that. The group Charity Navigator found that on Giving Tuesday, people gave less than they did last year. The average donation dropped from $129 to $118.
One of the challenges I think that's facing all of us is the uncertainty. And so people are being maybe more conservative in their giving.
And with rising prices, each dollar donated buys less, making it harder for toy drives and food pantries.
What's your wish for these families this holiday season?
That they can make it through.
That simple.
That's simple.
A simple wish getting harder to grant. Savannah Sellers, NBC News, Chicago.
All right, now for the story of a mom who started a jump rope team in honor of her son who was fatally hit by a car. NBC Nightly News anchor Lester Holt reports on how it's inspiring kids to literally aim higher.
Timing is key when it comes to double dutch.
I like to do double dutch tricks, cartwheels, and push-ups.
The hardest part is just trying to get in the rope.
because most people get scared of getting hit on the rope.
Here, inside this Jersey City community center, these kids are quite literally learning the ropes and a whole lot more.
It's more of a family. It's a safe zone.
Here in Jersey City, where we are from, it's tough on our streets. So if I can provide a place to keep them safe, just knowing that they're safe the times they're with me, I sleep well at night.
Kimberly Princella started the nonprofit Jump for Jerry a few years ago after her son was fatally hit by a car. Jerry was just 8. He loved Double Dutch. Now she's honoring him the best way she knows how.
We honor Jerry's legacy by enabling children of different ages, different background, to build life skills, confidence, strong character, and to realize their potential as leaders.
A sport building confidence.
It's fun, and you get a lot of workout from it, and you should try it.
And a team hoping to inspire other kids to jump a little higher in life.
Try it, like express yourself and open up to new things. It's not that hard.
Thanks to Lester for that reporting. Kimberly hopes that more Double Dutch teams in New Jersey can be created and continue to boost that confidence and inspire leaders in their children's community.
What a talented group of kids. Wow. Well, welcome back. The nominations for the 80th Golden Globe Awards are in. Battling it out for the Best Picture Drama Award are Avatar, The Way of the Water, which opens this week, Elvis, starring Austin Butler, Steven Spielberg's The Fabelmans, Tar, starring Cate Blanchett, and the summer's big hit, of course, Top Gun Maverick. This year's ceremony follows a year where the ceremony was not broadcast after the Hollywood Foreign Press Association faced criticism over its diversity and ethics. Well, you can catch the Golden Globes on January 10th on NBC. It's hosted by comedian Jared Carmichael. So, do you have any that you're rooting for?
Blaine, I got a lot to catch up on. You know, we don't have a lot of time for movies.
As I ticked through all those movies, I was like, haven't seen that, got to catch up on that.
Saw Top Gun. That was good. All right, thanks. This holiday season, a Massachusetts man is finding a special way to give back to our nation's heroes. MSNBC anchor Jose Diaz-Balart brings us the story on the gifts he's giving to offer some joy this time of year.
At Hanscom Air Force Base near Boston, a mission of joy.
Do you like that one better?
Free Christmas trees for active duty service members, veterans, and their families.
Oh, it feels great.
This made my day right here. It's one of the many ways Joe Fermani and his volunteers throughout Massachusetts say thank you to those who serve.
How many trees are you giving out this year?
We're gonna easily do 1,200 this year.
This has become for you a year-round passion project.
It absolutely is. As many as we can give them.
A passion project started 12 years ago with just 20 trees. Since then, it's grown into a full-time nonprofit called Operation Service. For Joe, it's personal. His dad was in the Navy and had a grandfather in the Army.
What message do you have for military families this Christmas?
The program was never meant as a handout. It was meant as a thank you.
So nice to meet you guys.
A thank you honoring couples like Senior Airman John Knight and his wife Candace.
Ornaments I've had for almost 5 years.
Their tree? A comfort while they're far away from family back in Fayetteville, North Carolina.
There she goes.
Yep, I like it.
It really feels like home. Honestly, it brings back so many memories of what me and my dad would go do. We'll go out and go find that Christmas tree.
He's really doing this to provide that hope and love in everybody's home.
Thank you for your service, and thank you for coming out today.
That gesture of love showing military families just how much they matter.
What you guys do is important to us, and we want to recognize that.
No matter where they are, the United States community is thinking of them. They're not out there alone. They're not doing what they're doing in vain. They're doing it, and we appreciate it.
Our thanks to Jose Diaz-Balart for that report. And as part of their mission statement, Operation Service strives to educate the youth about sacrifices made by those who serve.
Well, finally, we end this hour with a little Sunday night football. Last night, the Miami Dolphins faced off against the LA Chargers in a nail-biter of a game that left them just shy of victory. NBC News correspondent Jacob Soboroff got the inside scoop on the technology that the Dolphins are using to help them stay ahead of the pack this season.
The Miami Dolphins say their not-so-secret weapon is their speed.
With running room to the 10, the 5, touchdown.
The speed for you, one of the top metrics for you as an NFL player.
Speed is definitely a top metric for me.
Raheem Mostert and his teammates Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle are three of the fastest players in the NFL, regularly hitting 21, 22, even 23 miles per hour on the gridiron.
That's how fast I drive when my children are in my car. That's how fast you run.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. You're able to track the miles per hour and see how fast you're going.
The Dolphins' head strength and conditioning coach Dave Paloka says those incredible speeds are just one of the many data points gathered by small radio frequency ID chips affixed to players' jerseys and pads.
This is the tag. That's what it looks like.
This is it.
And you can feel how light that is.
That's crazy. Here's a quarter. Here's the tag. Almost exactly the same size.
On game days, all 32 teams in the NFL are tracked by sensors embedded in pads, pylons, even the ball. But only about a third of the teams use the technology during practice, including the Dolphins.
Why are the Dolphins all in on this technology?
It just makes sense. It's a no-brainer, when it comes to being able to see what they're doing out in the field, how they're responding to the stresses of practice, and then how we can tweak things to make sure that they're performing on an optimal level.
Miami's coaches and an analytics team monitor about 108,000 data points in real time.
Where guys are at compared to their averages during practice, speeds that's being hit, distance that's being covered. It's like putting a tracker on your car and knowing how many miles you covered in a day.
Coach Paloka says the information's just one part of the equation.
The information is not anything secretive, really. It's really how you execute it, and it's really how you are able to communicate with players and to get them to buy in and understand the why behind what you're trying to get them to do. You can have all the information in the world. If you can't communicate it effectively to these guys, and if they don't trust you, it's going to be useless.
And while speed's an important factor, Paloka says it's not everything.
We're looking at a ton of other metrics to be able to say, okay, this guy is doing a little too much, maybe we should pull back, or is not doing enough.
Might the guys ever push themselves too hard because they have access to all this data?
Sure. Yeah, and we want that. We want to be the ones to have to pull them back. But we also have to be smart. And so for a guy like Raheem, if he's doing too much, we might want to pull back a little bit because we still got a few more days and, we want to get him to Sunday.
For Mostert, he says the data fuels some healthy competition and prevents him from getting injured.
I think a lot of people would feel nervous if there was a chip tracking their every movement and their speed. You like it?
Oh, yeah, I love it. I go up to the guys that are running a laptop and ask them, hey, what I get? And they'll be like, yeah, you got an 18. So that's when I try to, ramp up in practice. You want to get as much as you possibly can, but still preserving your body leading up into the game. And then when the game comes, that's when you have to let it fly.
Really interesting stuff there. Thanks to Jacob Soboroff for that report. Coach Dave Paloka really believes that this data gives his team a competitive edge, but he says he doesn't want to keep it a secret. He says that this data can go a long way in stopping his players from getting injured, and that's something that he hopes to see for all teams across the league.
Yeah, a lot of technology going in to make sure that those players can stay safe. Absolutely. That does it for this hour of Morning News Now.
And the news continues right now.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.